Hi there, everybody. It's Tia Slidham of Tia Slidham Parenting Solutions. I'm back today to talk to you about consequences. This is a grueling one for parents, whether they are confused on whether or not they should be using a consequence, what consequence is right to be using, what are consequences. There's lots of questions floating around consequences, so I'm going to try and clear that up for you today in the little bit of time I have with you. So basically, we want to know that consequences are just one of the many, many parenting tools that you can use to help teach life lessons. But in order for them to work, they have to be done properly. This means that you need to know consequences can only effectively be used 10 to 15% of the time. So that means when your child is having misbehaviors, only 10 to 15% of the time will consequence be the tool that will work most effectively to help stop that behavior from reoccurring. We also need to know that if we don't follow proper consequence guidelines, the discipline turns into punishment, and then you're going to have a short-term fix, and the behavior is going to reoccur. So you really do want to follow the guidelines. So there are two types of consequences, natural and logical. So natural consequences are anything where you don't have to step in, and life really teaches your child a lesson by itself. So let's say you're getting ready to go out of the house in the morning, it's cold outside, you want your child to put the coat on, they're refusing. I'm sure we've all been there. No, I'm not wearing my coat. Put on your coat. No, I'm not wearing my coat. Put on your coat. If you are getting a lot of those battles, this is where a natural consequence can actually teach your child the appropriate lesson. So basically, let your child choose not to wear that coat. And when your child is cold and miserable or can't go out to recess because they came to school without a coat, they will learn that it's better for them to wear the coat. So now they know by the life lesson, by having to live through it, by having to kind of suffer, for lack of a better word, that it doesn't work for them to not wear their coat, and they would actually rather wear their coat. So now you have had a natural consequence work because you followed through and you let your child go to school cold. Now, if we bail them out and we take the coat and we shove the coat in their bag and we sort of try and weasel our way in there, the natural consequence doesn't actually work as effectively as it should. Now, logical consequences are a whole nother thing. This is where parents need to step in and you need to follow a few guidelines to make this work. I want you to think about when your child does something, if there's a logical consequence that would fit the bill. That means, does the consequence relate to the crime? So whether or not your child is refusing to, let's say, do their homework because they want to watch TV, you could set up a logical consequence with the fact that when you're done your homework, then you can watch TV. So you're basically setting it up for them to have something undesirable, I guess the homework, then have the desirable activity after they finish what needs to be done. This is one option to set this up. You also really need to set up the fact that it needs to be age appropriate. You're not going to ground somebody for a week. You're not going to take away video games for a week if your child is, 5 years old or 6 years old. It needs to relate to the crime, and it also needs to be a duration that's reasonable for their age and their development. I want you to think about setting these things up in advance so your child has a choice, and I want you to have your child repeat it back to you if they can. So let's go over one more just as an example. Let's say your child is refusing to turn off video games every night at dinner time. You keep asking them and reminding them. This is a good way for you to set up a logical consequence in advance. So basically you would sit down with your child, be sure they are listening, look them in the eye and say something like, from now on, our new rule is, I will set the timer for 5 minutes when it's time for your video games to be shut off. When the timer goes off, it's your job to shut down your video games, no matter if you're about to win the game or you're at a really good part. When the timer goes off, you shut off the video games, or tomorrow you lose your chance to play. So tell me what our plan is. Then your child will repeat this back to you, and they will say, okay, from now on, when the timer goes off, I have to shut off my video game, or tomorrow I don't get a chance. So now you have it set up, it's in advance. They have a choice whether or not they want to have video games tomorrow by following the plan. They understand the plan because it was repeated back to you. It's related to the crime because if they don't follow the plan, they don't get to have that same activity, the video games in this example. It's fair, the duration is fair, and it makes sense. Now, the key, again, just like in a natural consequence, is to follow through. You need to follow through and not give them opportunities to play one more minute or, oh, I forgot I had to finish it. No second chances. You know they knew the rule because they repeated it to you, and now you need to follow through and not give into video games tomorrow for a life lesson. Now, when you set up your plan the day after they've missed it, everything runs smoothly. Anyway, I hope this helps answer some of your questions on consequences. If you have any more questions, please reach out to me. I'd love to help you set up fair, natural, and logical consequences in your house to avoid misbehaviors.